Are governments suppressing evidence of extraterrestrial life? I don't know. Sounds kind of far-fetched, but who knows? When I got into this topic, I was a little surprised by the things that I found. Good evening, everyone. This is Mike from Go Cell Phone Repair. Yes, we normally make a bunch of cell phone repair videos when we talk about tech and that kind of stuff, but we like to change it up every once in a while. So tonight, we're going back to our conspiracy theory mode. A couple of weeks ago, we did a 9/11 conspiracy theories video, and we got a lot of people who apparently were interested in that. So I said, you know what, let's do it again. This is at the very least a bunch of ideas that are worth exploring. So, it's easy for me to jump in beforehand and say, okay, UFOs, governments hiding this stuff, blah, blah, blah. It sounds like a crazy person talking, I know. But at some point, there were enough people who thought this was a real thing that they got together and came up with some theories and started talking about it. And I said, at the very least, whether we believe in something or not, it is certainly never a bad idea to discuss it and to keep an open mind and listen to what people have to say. Because at the very least, even if you don't agree with an idea, you probably want to know what motivates people to be in that state of mind where they're so behind something that, for them, the idea is fact, like there's no debating it. And of course, we want to keep an open format where we can talk about this kind of stuff, throw some ideas around, and most importantly, hear what you all have to say tonight. I think if we're not muted, I'm going to try to unmute these mics. Let's see. Neo Vegas, are you there? Can you hear me? Probably not. Let's see. It looks like you... No, I'm not muted. Are you guys?
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Thanks. All right, he's on. Okay, cool. Good to have you with us. And I think we have real world review, maybe. Do you have a mic? Are you there? Okay, I'm going to give him a minute and see if he comes in. So anyways, friends, we got Neo Vegas. We got some people in the chat. Want to say shout out to everyone who joined us early. Nate's Tech Services, Oscar, everyone else who is out there. This is some interesting stuff. And I want to start this off with just kind of some background. The idea here, first of all, I don't think that anyone would argue this point. It seems unlikely, highly unlikely, that we are alone in the universe. Odds are, no matter what your belief system is, there are a lot of people who have ideas about how they think that the universe came into being. Set all that aside, because without even bringing that up, we have to imagine that we are in an area, we're in a place where there's just so much potential for life. It seems so highly unlikely that we would be the only ones here, and I'll get to that a little later in the stream. We've got some interesting statistics and theories and so forth that kind of support the idea that whether or not we've come into contact with them, at some point in time, somewhere in the universe, there's got to be other things out there that have intelligent thoughts the way that we do. I'm sure there will be people that argue that idea. But let's back up here just a second. So the first question is this: anytime you're investigating something, you want to have an idea of why it would be taking place in the first place. So if someone said the government is trying to suppress information and hide aliens from the general public, my natural response would be, why? Okay, first of all, if you want to give me this idea that I think is, kind of questionable, I want to know what the motive behind this action would be. It would make sense to me if you could say, here are some reasons that the government or any other governing body or agency or person or company or whoever it is wants to keep something secret. Here's the reason why. That would probably lead me to at least being, somewhat more open to the idea of that being a possibility, right? There's generally in any court case, there's a motive that's established, and that says, here is why we want to present this evidence, because here's a reason someone would act in this manner. So with that in mind, one of the biggest reasons that people will give, or explanations as far as why the government would want to hide extraterrestrial life from its citizens, would be the potential for mass hysteria. There's this idea that people, Neo, I'm going to mute your mic for just a second because something's going on there that keeps popping your thing on the screen. There we go. So, the idea is that people would lose their minds if they found out that there were aliens out there somewhere, or there were people like us living on other planets, that they would go crazy and there would be anarchy in the streets and people would be just, going nuts. Why? I'm not sure exactly, where that comes from. There's kind of an idea put forth that it would bring a lot of theistic beliefs into question. You know, for people who follow a particular type of religion, if their religion or their religious text does not include this information, that they might instantly be offended and upset and, you know, call into question their entire belief system. And I want to say right off the bat, I don't think that that's the truth for a couple of reasons. First of all, we already know that there are a lot of people who believe that aliens exist. So if there was confirmation to that idea, would that really dramatically change the way that people act? You know, my thinking is that if you brought out anything that conflicted, and we've seen this happen a lot lately, if you bring solid evidence that conflicts with someone's belief system, they will often make an adjustment and they will explain how those two things are not in conflict. So you can say, well, this person is perfect. And when you point out that person's flaws, people who follow that particular person or know them or related to them, or maybe that person themselves, it's easy for them to kind of dismiss those faults and say, yeah, but they're the closest thing to perfection that there is. So I really question whether this is a valid claim, that people would go nuts if they found out that there were aliens out there. Now, if there were aliens among us, that might be a different story. But, you know, on top of that, because of social media and the way that information is disseminated nowadays, if back in the 50s and back in the 60s, you know, right after Roswell and these different events took place throughout time, maybe back then you could have suppressed that information, but I think that that would be much more difficult to do nowadays. Every government has a difficult time keeping secrets from its population, keeping secrets from spies, from other governments, and so forth. And on top of that, we will be talking about numerous nations coordinating and agreeing that they would all suppress this information. It's not like UFOs. If there are UFOs that land, they're not necessarily going to land in the United States. They're not going to necessarily land in China. They're not going to necessarily land in any particular place. So if everyone in the world or multiple locations in the world had access to this information, what would motivate them to say, okay, we're going to jump on board with all these other governments who said, hey, it's a bad idea to let other people know that this exists. So guys, feel free to chime in if you have any thoughts on this matter. That's my first take on it. Is, you know, I'm still questioning why this would be a valid idea in the first place, that a government or governments would want to keep this information from their populations.
Well, let me give you one another far-fetched theory, but another theory, you know, just the same thing that motivates everyone for capital gain. What if there was some alien technology that we had discovered? You know, maybe a few aliens had visited this planet. We found their technology. And what if Apple is piecemeal selling it to, an unknown company is selling that technology to us over the years, and they don't want to just take it out, you know, give it to the public all at one time because of the financial gain that could be had by selling this technology to the public through consumer products and utilizing that information instead of just saying, hey, here's how you get to, you know, from A all the way to Z. Instead, they're like, oh, we can make, you know, advancements in technology by having this proprietary. So I'm just saying this just would be one other theory that, hey, there's capital gain or financial gain by people that have this access to this technology where other people don't.
Okay, so that would mean that whoever these companies are, like you said, it could be Apple or anyone else, they have access to this information that the aliens have provided to us. And obviously the aliens are on board with not letting the general population know about their presence. That's what you're saying, right?
Or potentially, hey, maybe there was one or a few aliens or a few alien spacecraft. We've taken it apart. There was some theories, right, that Hitler had found some alien technology and was starting to utilize that for his world conquest, which would bring up a second theory, which is advantage in war or in combat or something if you had alien technology or alien weaponry or something like that. And not saying that they're even complicit in that. Maybe they crash landed on Earth. Maybe we have access to some of their technology, but we're not making it public because it gives us a competitive advantage in warfare, you know, not just in financial means or consumer goods. Just
Okay.
another reason. Just giving you asked for reasons. Those are two other reasons that I would say that why you wouldn't share that type of technology with the mass public at once.
Okay, fair enough. So we stumbled upon some alien equipment, and quickly some corporation jumped in and said, "We're going to profit from this, so don't let anyone know. We're going to sell bits and pieces over a period of time." That I get. That totally makes sense. And honestly, you know how suspicious I am about corporate greed. That's probably like going to be the number one.
Like that might be the only valid argument of why.
One of the best explanations ever. Now, I'm going to offer one more here real quick, and that is based on a publication, and I can't remember where I read it, but it was pretty crazy. But long and short of it is that what if there are aliens? There are bunches of aliens all over the universe, everywhere. They can communicate freely with each other and with us, but there is one particular race of aliens who pretty much annihilates every life form that they can find in the universe. And all of the other aliens have gotten together and said, keep quiet, because if they find you, you're done. And they've somehow communicated with world leaders and said, listen, if you make too much noise, guess what? You're going to get a visit. And when you do, things are going to end badly. You know, and what would their motivation be? Who knows? Maybe they're looking for more habitable planets to colonize. And if we think about this, historically speaking, at least from the human perspective, anytime we take two civilizations where one has far more advanced technology than the other, things always end up bad for the guys that were way behind. You know, whether you talk about settling early America or conquering parts of Europe or anywhere else in the world, you know, that's typically how it goes. Whoever has superior technology doesn't tend to really respect the population that they come into contact with. So that would be a valid reason, I think, for hiding this, or for hiding the planet in general. And there's a lot of doomsday sayers out there who are going, you know, the SETI problem, the SETI system that they have for the search for extraterrestrial life, and they have another one out there, I think it's called METI or something along those lines. They're saying this may not be a good idea, because if we keep looking to make contact with someone else, we might find someone that we don't want to come across, and we're letting them know we're here. So those are some ideas out there. What do you say, Real World?
Assuming my microphone is working, I haven't been able to test that, but I am thinking of it in a monetary way. I think that's one of the only reasons that they're going to do that. And I think at first they were like, okay, this is what we think is, you know, this is what's happening. And people are like, whoa, you know, what can I do? Like, I want to watch, I want to learn about all this stuff. And they go, oh, so you'll pay money to pay attention to this stuff? And they go, yeah, we will. And they go, okay, let's make movies. Let's do all this other stuff about it. And I mean, you know, the whole thing, I think the thing that kills me the most, and I always tell people, you know, when it comes to the United States is, you know, your tax dollars are going towards government work and everything, but do you think your tax dollars are going towards like Area 51 and stuff like that? Because they have to be, right? Because no one else is paying for that. So
Absolutely. And I want to say it was back in the 90s. I just stumbled across something today. And in fact, the United States government spent about $16 million on a study researching to find out if there is extraterrestrial life. And obviously that money does come from taxpayers. So when you look at something like that, you kind of come up, I think, with two possibilities. One, there was some valid reason, or valid reasons, that they thought, yes, there has to be some extraterrestrial life that we are capable of at least finding. Or B, we're going to create a bunch of jobs, and this is how we're going to, you know, say, hey, we need these people here. Here's how we're going to I want to say validate the funding. You know, we're going to say that we need these tax dollars to pay for these jobs, because we have to find out if there's extraterrestrial life. However, if my understanding is correct, they didn't really disclose this to the public. So it was kind of like, we're doing this study, we're spending the money, but we're not telling anyone what we're spending it on just yet, at least not as far as the general public is concerned. And sometimes that's the way it goes, especially when we think about things like military spending. Obviously, the government is not going to disclose all of the details as to where that money is going. They just have a budget that is going to be use at some point. So one thing that I did want to do here is, and I thought was very interesting, and I actually came on this, doing this research to look into these alien conspiracy theories, because usually when you think about a conspiracy theorist, especially when we talk about aliens, you'll have people who, I'm going to say, want to believe. If you watch the X-Files, there's just kind of that whole spirit of, hey, I want to believe there's something out there. But there's a lot of people also on the opposite end who immediately write this off. If I can't see it, I don't believe it. You're crazy, little green man, that kind of thing. And while I have to admit, I might have somewhat fallen into that category initially, because I thought, listen, there probably is some life out there, but my biggest concern is with the whole idea is the odds of us actually coming into contact with another life form. And here's why. This is pretty crazy. If you haven't already heard about this, folks, there's something called the Fermi paradox. And I watched a couple of videos and did some reading on it within the last few days. And to make a long story short, so you don't have to go do all that research yourself, Enrico Fermi was a physicist back in the 1950s. He and a guy named Michael H. Hart made an argument for the contradiction between the high probability of alien life existing and the fact that we have not heard from them yet. So his statement was kind of like, we look at these statistics, which I'm going to give you in just a second, and we say that there's got to be, it seems incredible that we would be the only presence in the universe that is capable of intelligent thought. And obviously, as we evolve, we get smarter, our technologies become more advanced, and eventually we will be able to travel a lot farther, a lot faster. So where are all these advanced alien races that should be ahead of us at this point in time, and should be able to travel throughout the universe, right? And to put this into perspective, if we look at our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy itself, just one galaxy that we live in, there are 20 billion stars. And I'm not even going to try to explain a billion, because it's so difficult to visualize. It's really tough to get a grasp on what this is. But a billion is a huge number. I mean, I remember in junior high, we printed out periods on a paper, on an 8.5 by 11 paper, just full of nothing but dots all the way across in periods. And we printed out hundreds of these sheets, and we stuck them to every wall in the classroom. And I mean, you know how big a classroom is in junior high. And to cover that entire wall with little tiny periods that were printed on a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, just completely wallpaper the entire room, and we were able to represent 1 million, not a billion, but a million. So if we think of 1 million stars, and then we multiply that, and think of 1 billion stars and multiply that by 20 billion stars just in our galaxy alone that are similar to the sun that we orbit around, right? Okay, so that means there are many, many more stars, but 20 billion of them fit the type of sun, the type of size of the sun that we revolve around. Obviously, there will be some planets that will be orbiting those stars as well. Are there some people there? Who knows? Many of these stars, however, are also billions of years older than our solar system, which means that if life started out there, let's say 1 billion years before it started here, we would expect those civilizations to be far more advanced than ours is. There are an estimated 100 billion galaxies in the known universe. So take that 20 billion stars that's in our galaxy and multiply that by 100 billion. Like, I can't even wrap my mind around that number, like the number of zeros that would follow 100 billion times 20 billion. That is a ridiculously huge number in the known universe. That's the edge of the universe from one end to the other that we are aware of, and we don't even really know where it ends completely. Each one of those 100 billion galaxies has 100 billion to 1,000 billion stars. So, the scale of this is just, it's unfathomable, like how many stars exist in the known universe. There are likely trillions of habitable planets in our known universe based on these numbers. So if we look at the number of stars, the ones that are the size that ours is, and just, the sheer mathematics of it, we would think that there are probably trillions of planets that would support life the same way that the Earth does. The Earth is estimated to be about 4.5 billion years old. The Milky Way is estimated to be about 13.5 billion years old. So our solar system has only been here, 25% or 30% of the lifespan of our galaxy, which means that there's much older stars and much older planets out there already. And the problem, or one of the problems, I guess, when it comes to just figuring out how big the universe is the fact that it is constantly expanding. So even if we could travel at the speed of light and we were traveling towards the edge of the universe, we would never reach it because it continues to grow. And Neo, you said you had a figure on how fast that growth was taking place earlier today that you were talking about. I can't remember exactly what the number was.
I was looking for that number and I don't have it in front of me, but I read some article that was saying that it was in the tens of thousands of planets that are actually expanding out of our reach, within, if we were assumed to be able to travel at light speed, like every minute of the day, that we'll never be able to actually reach. So
okay, so the edge of the universe is unattainable for all practical purposes, as far as we know. But there's, if there is someone like us or something more advanced than us, there are a number of other problems that come into play here. One of the first things being traveling these vast distances. Even if you were to achieve interstellar travel, it would still take millions of years for us just to navigate our Milky Way galaxy. And that's not even going out into the rest of the universe. Mike, all of the numbers of stars and age of Earth is given to us by governmental institutions. If there is a deception to hide aliens, maybe they are making all this stuff up. We can't verify it. Okay, fair enough, Nate. And, I think that a lot of this information comes from scientists and organizations that are staffed by scientists. But if we want to go with the government suppressing information, then it would certainly be not out of question that they've gotten a hold of some of this information and changed, the source code, so to speak, if you want to call it that. So fair enough, Nate. However, when you look at the sky and at night, on a clear night, if you happen to live in an area where you can, we can certainly see that the Milky Way or galaxy or whatever we think that is there, and there are quite a few stars. I don't think you can count them all. So, maybe those numbers are not completely accurate. Maybe there are many fewer galaxies than we think. Maybe there are actually more. I don't know the answer to that. But what's really in question, obviously, here is whether or not any government has gotten a hold of something that would prove that there is existence of alien life, and if so, why are they hiding it from us? And where are they hiding it? Exactly, because I always thought of Area 51 whenever we talked about this stuff. Apparently, there's another place called S4, which I think is slightly south of Area 51, and everyone is saying, forget about Area 51. That's not where the real story is. There is another facility where they are, in fact, deconstructing whatever stuff it is that fell out of the sky that they found. And what makes this more difficult, obviously, and Nate, I'm going to go along with you here with the whole conspiracy thing, and that is we have seen blatantly fake attempts at showing alien technology, and that that would feed into the conspiracy thought that, hey, the real stuff is what they're hiding. They're showing us this stuff that looks fake so that people will say, oh, this is all fake. You can't believe in anything you see. Fair enough on that one. Project Blue Book. It's funny you mentioned that because as a kid, that was one of my favorite shows to watch. And I haven't heard about that. I haven't heard of that for a long time, but they actually made a series out of Project Blue Book, which was, I want to say it was NASA. It might have been the military, actually. It was the military's investigation into alien existences and life forms and stuff like that. That was a great show, as a matter of fact. At least I remember it being a good one. Sometimes when you get older, you go back and watch it, and it's not as good as you remember it being. So out of these civilizations, though, let's say they do exist. Let's say that there are some aliens somewhere, whether they're in our galaxy, maybe they're very close by. Maybe we just haven't heard from them yet. Maybe they don't want to be seen. Maybe the government's hiding their existence. Maybe there is cooperation between our leaders and the leaders of that planet, and they have decided not, it's not in the public's best interest for us to be talking. What types of civilizations might actually exist? And, there are three categories that are commonly discuss when we talk about any type of civilization. So I wanted to kind of break this down so we can, at least imagine what it might be like for another planet where aliens exist. And they've broken this down to three categories. The first they call a type 1, and that is a civilization that can harness 100% of its planet's available energy. I think that it's obvious why this is an important factor, because when we talk about traveling from one end of the universe to the next, obviously being able to use energy efficiently, not only to survive, but also to build vehicles that can move you from one place to another at great speeds and great distances, your ability to utilize energy efficiently is important. And the more that you can do that, probably the closer you're getting to something like traveling at the speed of light, interstellar travel, and so forth. So if a civilization could harness 100% of its energy, its available energy, we would call that a type 1 civilization. Currently, for what it's worth, us humans here on Earth, are at about 73% of our potential. We are expected to reach 100% of energy, using our planet's available energy within the next couple hundred of years. Now that's type 1, that's us. We are 73% of the way to being considered a type 1 civilization. To go to the next level, a type 2 civilization is one that can harness 100% of its star's energy. So whatever sun a planet is orbiting around, when they reach a technological level where they can harness 100% of the energy that star is giving off, which we know is a ridiculous amount of energy compared to what we have here on the Earth in the way of fossil fuels, nuclear energy, hydroelectric, you name it, that is nothing when you take a look at the potential energy that comes from a star like ours, or an even bigger star out there. This would involve building something like a structure that would encompass the sun in its entirety. It sounds far-fetched, but they say hypothetically this is something that is possible. And if you were able to do that, you would then qualify as a type 2 civilization. Now there is a third tier. This would be the highest level that we can think of, or at least at this point in time, and that would be a civilization that could control the energy of its entire galaxy. And that would probably be the type of life or intelligence that could travel throughout the universe. They expected that by, we talk about humans kind of morphing into machines at some point, right? Like eventually we won't be flesh and blood, we'll be some sort of entity that moves from one type of cyber being into another so that we can prolong life inevitably. And the thinking is that in a type 3 civilization, they have already transcended beyond that type of technology. So they've taken their flesh and blood form, or their soul, or whatever you want to call it. They've moved their minds into robots a long time ago. They decided that was no longer efficient, and they've gone on to a different stage where now they are just an ball of energy that can move around freely. And some people might even equate this to a ghost. So something along those lines, they just kind of spiritually float around all over the place, and they have no need for a physical form anymore. So we imagine that might be what a type 3 civilization would look like. And if so, that would explain all the little spots I see on my camera when I take pictures. I mean, if they're visiting, just say it. Yeah. Guys, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm honestly kind of just lost because there's so many things to really think of. I mean, you try and apply it to other things too, and how we have so many categories for stuff like that. And just to think that we're so low, yet we think that we're so advanced. And then to think that there's other like higher tiered civilizations out there, it's too much to think of.
It's kind of mind-blowing, right? I mean,
yeah, I think that there's a lot of explanations that even if there are these other tiered civilizations out there, that they haven't contacted us for many different reasons, right? I mean, how do they know to look specifically here? Saying that our galaxy alone is 100,000 light years wide, and there's 100 billion galaxies like ours. How do they know to look specifically here at a dot in a space as expansive as the universe? How would they even know to direct their energies to head in our direction? Or who's to say that these civilizations aren't like ours in the way that, you know, humanity constantly has conflict with itself, and at some point maybe the civilizations have eradicated themselves or destroyed themselves before they've had a chance to go explore to our planet, or maybe they've come to our planet at a time when we didn't record our history and we never made a mention of it, and they haven't been back since. I mean, there's numerous explanations that if there was a civilization out there that exists at these tiers, that we still wouldn't be aware of them. I mean, the amount of time that we've even been aware of looking in the skies or looking for other civilizations, according to something that I found on space.com, is that we've only been looking for 80 years approximately for other civilizations. So, you know, we weren't aware to look for them. And in the fact that we're such a needle in a haystack to begin with, what would make us a priority or even available to them? Maybe they have this technology, but they're 50 billion galaxies away, and there's a lot more interesting things along the way than to come over to our galaxy.
That's a good point. Like maybe they have no motivation to come here. And yeah, everything you said is you know, a lot of the information that I went through, and you know, being the skeptic that I am, one of the biggest ones, as you mentioned, is just that we're so far apart that getting here, you know, even if these civilizations are billions of years ahead of us in technology, would they ever potentially be able to traverse that distance? And also, when we talk, what you mentioned about them finding us in the first place, which I think is a big challenge, you know, not to mention the traveling aspect of it. We've been sending out radio waves since what, I don't know, the 30s or 40s or something like that. I'm probably off on that, but it's been a while, right? It's been less than 100 years, I think, that we've been broadcasting radio. And with all the interstellar noise that is out in the universe, it would be very difficult in the first place for that to reach someone who is so far away. And secondly, what if radio is not even something they look for anymore? You know, if you think about it, it's like we don't look for smoke signals, right? Because we don't use that anymore to communicate. No one has got a Morse code line going into their house. So how would it make sense? You know, they could have gone beyond microwave and who knows what else for communication. And maybe their search for intelligent life does not include radio frequencies, and maybe doesn't include any of the bandwidths that we're on right now. We had a couple comments here I wanted to get to real quick. Yeah, Nate, that is the Dyson sphere. That was one of the methods that they talked about as far as being able to completely surround a sun or a star, which is, you know, obviously a huge undertaking, but imagine what you could do with that much energy. I mean, it would be just unimaginable, really. Tech for your needs, what's going on? If there's alien life out there and is being hid by the government, sooner or later the truth is going to come. Someone's going to spill the beans. Then I wonder how the public is going to take it. And I got to say, Tech, if you weren't with us earlier, I think that what would probably happen is that it would be called fake news. So yes, eventually that information would come out and then it would be dismissed as a hoax. And probably a lot of people would be willing to write it off and say, yeah, somebody made that up. They fabricated this, CGI technology. Now you can make people look like they're saying things that there aren't. I mean, I agree with you. Eventually it would leak out, but I wonder how the media would react and then how the public would react. And I'm not sure that, I mean, I certainly wouldn't lose my mind if I found out that there were aliens one galaxy away. I mean, why would we? If anything, I would hope that it would be encouraging, unless they were planning to eat us or something. You know, that could be bad, obviously. Hey, what's up, Johnny Chang? For a discussion of ET life, Mike, do you have a collaboration with John Michael Godier to theorize all the possibilities? Nope, but I will. I'll check in. I'll hit him up, Johnny, for sure. Caesar, how you doing? Mind blown. When I was in Mexico for vacation, we saw something that fell from the sky and was hovering over us like 3 miles away at night. The next morning, some of the cows were found dead. Scary. Seriously? That's pretty freaky, man. Even with our current technology, we are still forbidden to make real presence on our inner solar system planets by way other than remote robotics. Imagine an alien civilization happen just want to visit us because they watched the sitcom of I Love Lucy. I Love Lucy. Yeah, and that's something they talked about also, because we broadcast all these television signals into the sky. And if some were to reach other planets, What if they were watching I Love Lucy and they thought that that's, you know, what humans were like? Would they be motivated to come visit us? I don't know. But there's another problem in addition to the ones that you mentioned, Neo, beyond the distance. We also talk about different points in time, which you mentioned. You know, you say that maybe they came here a long time ago. Maybe they came and taught the Egyptians how to build the pyramids. You know, that is a popular theory, that that was alien technology being used. And again, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but personally, I believe that it's unlikely because of the timeline. If we think about our lifespan on this planet Earth, you know, that we're aware of, we've only been here in this form for a few thousand years, right? Like 6,000, 7,000 years, something like that, where we wrote on cave walls and communicated in some form or another. Others would argue it's even less than that. We don't really know 100%, but we think that humans, you know, like us, that could talk, that could build spaceships. We know that for sure. You know, we've only been here for the last 50 years, right? So if another civilization did something a billion years ago and they did come to Earth, well, there's nobody here left to talk about it. You know, there's certainly no records of that. And the people who inhabited our planet at that period of time would not have been evolved to the point where they could probably even communicate, definitely not use any of this technology, you know, if it were shared with them. So if they did come and check in, they might say, let's come back in another billion or 2 years. So if we look at this timeline, you know, from the known origin of the universe until now, we are this tiny, tiny little speck right here on the edge where this is today, you know, and you have all these billions of years here before us, and there will be billions of years after we're long gone. What are the odds that an alien happens to come here during our lifetime? You know, an alien capable of traveling the universe happens to show up right now in such a big, you know, potential stretch of time. They're going to choose this tiny little dot on the timeline. I mean, it's possible, right? But there's another problem that comes into play, and this is what they call the great filter. So if you're not already familiar with this, I'm going to do my best to explain this. You know, I mentioned the Fermi paradox earlier, and what that means is, hey, odds are there are aliens out there. How come we haven't heard from them yet? That was his paradox. You know, all signs point to there has to be alien life somewhere, but where are the aliens? You know, that's the big question. And I think that assumes a lot. You know, that assumes that they can get here, that they want to get here, and that they would want us to know that they exist if and when they arrived, right? So those are all those different factors. But beyond that, we have something called the great filter. And in the context of the Fermi paradox, it is what prevents dead matter from undergoing abiogenesis, which is basically the origin of life. So again, I tried to simplify this as much as I could. A little bit of it goes over my head, but I'll do my best here. So the great filter, which acts to reduce the great number of sites where intelligent life might arise to the tiny number of intelligent species with advanced civilization actually observed, currently just one, and that's us, humans, okay? So there are these filters that have to be met, that you have to get through these filters before life can begin. You have to have all the right conditions. You have to have certain temperatures. You have to have things come together and events and all these different things happen. And you have to get past this great filter in order for life to begin in the first place. This probability threshold, which could lie behind us in our past, so we may have made it through the filter that allows us to be alive nowadays and for our lives to continue, or that filter may lie in front of us. So we might still be at the beginning of a life, you know, a type of life, and we still have to get past that filter in order to continue, which is a much scarier thought, because that means we're not really in the safe zone just yet. We have to get past this filter to continue living. And if it's behind us, great. If it's in front of us, that means we don't know how much longer we are going to be around. It might work as a barrier to the evolution of intelligent life or as a high probability of self-destruction. The main counterintuitive conclusion of this observation is that the easier it was for life to evolve to our stage, the bleaker our future chances probably are. Filter possibilities may mean that only recently has the universe become capable of sustaining life and we are among the first. It might also mean that the Great Filter is somewhere in the future. That would mean that once we reach it, our life ceases to exist. If this comes in the form of technological advancement, then in other words, then other worlds may have already reached this point, and their last words were something along the lines of, this new device will solve all of our problems once I press this button. And that would be the last thing. So in other words, what they're saying is, if we have not reached this filter yet, it's entirely possible that alien civilizations did, and that's why we're not hearing from them anymore. And they suspect, and we're looking at it right now, folks, as fast as technology is moving, it's entirely possible that other civilizations have gone down the same path that we did, and the end of their technological revolution meant the destruction of life as they knew it for whatever reasons. And we certainly don't plan it that way, but a lot of doomsday type of people, or what's the word I'm looking for, doomsayers or something along those lines, a lot of people would say that some of this technology will not lead to great things. And I always argue that it comes down to the way that you use it, right? Like anything else, it can be used for good or bad. But if that final filter that has prevented aliens from getting to us is self-destruction, and if we haven't reached that filter yet, then future generations don't have good stuff to look forward to unless they figure out a way around it. And hopefully that'll be what happens.
Well, could it be potentially that part of that filter is also escaping the planet that you're in? Because maybe, as we know, that it's statistically just a matter of time before we get hit by an asteroid, or there's a giant solar flare, or some other cosmic event that's going to wipe out civilization before we get to the point where we can actually get off of this planet and get to the other tiered societies.
For sure. I mean, the longevity of any life form would obviously, and when I say longevity, what are we talking about? Indefinitely? Because absolutely. Sooner or later, this planet will be hit by an asteroid. We'll see some sort of pandemic disease. There will be nuclear war. Something eventually will happen where we will, we've already heard people, much greater minds than mine, obviously, talk about this, where they say, hey, we've got to get off the planet because eventually we can't stay here. And, ultimately, our sun will go supernova and mass destruction to everyone. So yes, I'd agree. That's certainly a filter that, beyond the one that I mentioned, that's another filter to consider. If you're not able to travel outside of your habitable planet, what happens? You don't live much longer, right? So if some other form of life 1 billion years ago could have gotten here, but they couldn't get off their own planet en masse, and they traveled here and they visited us and they went home, and then their home didn't exist anymore at some point in time, then we wouldn't hear from them again, right? That's the crazy thing about it.
Nope.
Nope. Aliens have been depicted on a lot of ancient art. Even Da Vinci painted a UFO in the background of his art. Interesting. Are we there yet regarding technological singularity? Johnny, I don't think so. And it's interesting because were you on last week when we had our attorney from Florida? Because we talked a little bit about artificial intelligence, and this is one of the things that I believe is still open to debate. And we have machines that pass the Turing test. So by that definition, there's AI that can sort of pass itself off as a human, I guess, under the right circumstances, can hold a conversation. But again, he kind of submitted that, all these responses are programmed. They're not generated. And the artificial intelligence that we see now, is not self-aware, really, is by our definition, right? I don't think. I mean, that's probably debatable as well. So singularity, I don't think we've reached the point of technological singularity. Will we? Is it possible? And again, completely debatable. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe alien technology is what will enable that. I don't know. On a little sidestep, can we guys vote in here for who are more Star Wars or Star Trek influenced? I guess. Hey, guys, if you want to vote, by the way, there's a card. Let's see. I'm going to try to point to it. It's going to be up there, right? No, it's going to be up there. It's going to be up here. There's a little eye you can press on, and if you click on that, there's a poll, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on whether or not the government is suppressing alien existence or technology from us in any way. And then I'll post the results for that as soon as we get a few people who vote, and see what you all think. I'm curious. Has anyone watched the TV show Earth Final Conflict by Gene Roddenberry? I have not. If any intelligent civilization other than Earthlings happen to survive, it surely may take different ways than us be able to success pollution of their environment. We'd probably pollute their environment, I suppose. If we could get a hold of some aliens, Neo, real world, what would you say to them?
What do we need to do? What do we what are we missing out on? You know, like we have all this, you know, crazy technology now, but what, like you can imagine 10 years ago, if you told someone the technology that we have now, you would blow their mind. But now if you tell someone 10 years from now the technology we have now, they'd be like, okay, cool. Like no one cares. So I wonder on what part of the spectrum are they? Are they way beyond technology, you know, way beyond the technology that that we have? And, you know, is like, should we focus on trying to get to that point, or should we just stay where we are?
Like, are we going the right direction?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And to ask them, you know, what are the largest challenges that their civilization had to overcome to get to where they are? You know, what are those challenges? Was it self-destruction? Was it escaping the planet? Was it getting to a certain level of science and technology? Was it a particular innovation that got them to the next level?
Do they have challenges in the first place?
If we think about, you know, the challenge of getting to us or communicating with us, obviously that would point to them being more advanced than we are. So, you know, statistically speaking, if we come across someone who can travel from one galaxy to the next, they've all obviously harnessed some sort of hypothetical mode of transportation that we've never been able to execute. You know, wormholes is probably the most popular theory, that there's some way to travel from one end to the other without actually going through that actual distance. I got to say, here's another question for you, just kind of related, but slightly off the topic here. Here's my question. If you can design a vehicle that can travel at the speed of light, heck, if you could design a vehicle that could travel, I don't know, 100,000 miles per second, that's, you know, a little more than half the speed of light. What happens when you encounter little pieces of debris that, I know the universe is a big place and everything is far apart from itself, but sooner or later you think they'd run into something, right? How do you navigate around that kind of stuff? Because you're going to be traveling in a straight line if you're moving that fast. Yeah, everyone goes silent on that.
I think that's what computers are for. They map it out for you, you know, like you map it out in advance and your computer just, you know, routes you the only safe route. I mean,
you just say, Siri, give me a safe route to the next planet.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember how much open space there is. I think you have to intentionally run into things, or you have to map your timing to avoid things that are moving in space. So, you know, things are also moving and changing their position in space. So maybe you know, just the same way, like you said, it's like Google Maps, but it's like space maps, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
But does it matter? Because think about it. Like if you're, like, for example, if you're flying in a plane and they always say like, they always talk about like how many birds are killed when you're flying through the air because they just, you know, like birds get sucked up, or, you know, they hit a bird or whatever flying in the air. I don't know how true that really is, but, you know, like you've heard it before. I wonder if it's the same thing, because if you're flying in an airplane and you hit something like an animal that's up in the air, the plane isn't going to move. Like nothing is really going to change. So I wonder, unless you hit something like really large, is it like if there's rocks that are, you know, the size of like normal rocks that are on Earth, and you have a ship that's the size of a, you know, larger than a house, is it really going to make that much of a difference?
Well, when you say rocks that are normal sized on Earth,
like,
I've seen some boulders that are taller than me.
maybe like an inch in diameter, you know, something like that.
What if it's the size of a car?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
space maps will automatically calculate the size of the object and either reroute you or take you right through it if it's, you know,
It's gonna,
if it's
it's gonna
just
be
a
like your
pebble.
navigation.
Yeah.
Taking alternate route. Okay.
It
Fair enough.
makes like a cone, you know, and just everything that hits it, it just
It
like
just bounces off.
Avoid highways, it would be like avoid asteroid belts or avoid space debris.
So let's say we get over the distance thing and they can navigate around these objects, or maybe they use some wormholes to get from here to there instantaneously. I guess the big question is, what is their motivation to visit us? You know, like you said earlier, if they're that advanced, if they're that far ahead of us, it would be like us saying, hey, there are some insects living 3 planets over. Do we want to build a spaceship and fly over there? I mean, I guess we would out of curiosity, maybe, to study them. And if we did, would we try to communicate with them, or would we just observe, because we would consider ourselves much more advanced than they are? You know, it'd be like, let's say there were primates living on another planet, and at most we might be able to teach them some tricks, but we couldn't really communicate with them. Would we want them to know that we were there? Would they notice if we were there? I don't know. On top of that, if we assume that they are advanced enough for that type of travel, then their technology has got to be, you know, we would say, well, their technology is at least, you know, 100 years ahead of ours. Maybe it's 1 billion years ahead of ours. If it is, then we're talking about a completely different form of life and a completely different set of everything. You know, when you think about it, thought processes, resources, morality, you know, anything you can imagine, it's got to be so drastically different at that point. I think you're probably just like a ball of energy floating around. How about those airplanes that disappear? If that part of it, if that's part of it, because never were found, or the government is hiding something. Are you talking about the Bermuda Triangle? Because that's probably going to be one coming up. Neil, what were you saying? I kind of interrupted you there.
I was just going to say that both, if you subscribe to either the Star Wars or the Star Trek philosophy, they still look just like humans. However, you know, they're still just in humanoid format. So,
and fortunately, everyone speaks English no matter where you go. So that's
it's handy. Universal translator.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Universal translator. But you would have to have a key. You'd have to have a dictionary to create that thing, right? Like it couldn't automatically interpret sound and instantaneously convert an entire language. I like when sci-fi shows explain themselves and it makes sense. You know, like they've mapped out the language, they know it. Now you have a translator. But what if you never encountered that species before? Then what?
In regards to the Bermuda Triangle thing where planes disappeared, they actually came out with some articles saying statistically it's more likely that low-flying planes and things of that nature were hit by large waves or something in that area, or so that's why, or ships disappearing in that area were hit by enormous waves, and that's why a lot of ships going into the Bermuda. So there's always a logical explanation for anything that happens here on Earth, you know.
Yeah, well, when you said that the waves were hitting the planes, I
had to reconsider what I was saying.
If they're hitting the planes, then those planes are meant to go down.
They're meant to.
Finishing the job at that point. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, it is a good topic, though. I remember that back in the 70s, I want to say the Bermuda Triangle was a big deal. In fact, it seems like they made a movie about it. And it turns out that the Bermuda Triangle isn't really a triangle so much as it is kind of a zone, like an area, but it's prone to a lot of, if I remember correctly, it's prone to a lot of storms that just come out of nowhere, so you're not generally prepared for them. But certainly something worth, good conspiracy topic. I'm going to put that on the list for sure. I'd be interested to find out more about the Bermuda Triangle stuff. What I was about to say about waves, about waves hitting planes. Yeah, dude, when you said that, I was like, wait a minute, how are the waves hitting the planes? That would have been a tough one. But yeah, waves sinking ships, that makes sense. Let's see.
I don't know, waves hitting planes, planes disappearing, ships sinking. I mean, it would have made sense, right?
Yeah. Johnny said, one thing to consider is that whatever ET civilization, or extraterrestrial, I shouldn't be saying ET, that makes you think of a little dude with a long finger, right? One thing to consider is that whatever extraterrestrial civilization who wish to make first contact with us, they may have conquered all the prejudice that is plaguing us right now, such as wars and crime. That may be true, and maybe not. I mean, who knows? You would hope, right? You would think that someone who is that advanced has evolved to a point where they don't take part in destructive behaviors. But I always question that, because it seems like that takes a long time to be gone from human behavior. I mean, we know in our case that it wasn't that long ago that we had to fight on a daily basis to survive. So it takes a long time for any species to evolve, and we're not that far away from that time period where that was a normal thing. That was how we survived. We fought other tribes. We hunted. We had to track down animals in order to eat. So is it going to be a while before we get past those behaviors? I think so, but maybe in a billion years, Johnny, there could be a civilization out there who's already kind of written that stuff off as a waste of time because they don't need it anymore. That's a cool thought. Hopefully. But then they're going to come here and see us and be like, yeah, these guys, not really worth the time. Alien abductions.
Are they real?
Are they real?
I know that LSD is real.
LSD is real, and so is PTSD. And so are, I have my theories about it, and they're probably going to sound kind of weird, but I suspect that some people who believe that they've experienced an alien abduction and an alien probe or anything along those lines might have some underlying trauma that they need to explore with an appropriate physician. Beyond that, I'm curious as to how many people don't just enjoy kind of being in the spotlight talking about how they were abducted with aliens. What was that movie that came out a couple of years ago? Where it was kind of filmed like a documentary almost, where the guys were driving out in their truck and they got abducted by aliens. I'm gonna go blank on the title for that one. What do you think? Would an alien come here, disguise themselves so that no one knew that they were around, sneak into certain people's house, take them up onto some spaceship, examine them, and then bring them back and try to plant them without anyone knowing about it?
All I know is if I was an alien doing that, like for example, if you were to kidnap someone, you would do it permanently. I don't think you would be like, let me kidnap you, talk to you, ask you a few questions, and then give you back, so then everyone can tell exactly what happened. Like, I mean, I wouldn't want to do that, but wouldn't you think that some people would be abducted and never heard from, like, ever again?
Yes, I would think that would be much more likely.
I find it hard to believe that every single one is like, look, this is what happened and everything. It's like, I don't. And at some point, if they were doing that as like a test just to see what's going on, don't you think aliens would have been like, hey, so we are real. This is what's going on.
What if they were communicating, but in a way that we didn't understand, maybe through imagery or something? I mean, I think we could just blanket discount all the ones that had experiments through the rear end, because I don't think any advanced civilization would even, that doesn't even make sense at that point.
Unless that civilization came from like dogs or something like that, yeah, that wouldn't make sense.
You kind of think they would have
had that theory.
You think they would have had like X-rays and MRIs and stuff way before we did, right? There would be no need for the probing stuff.
They would just look at you and know all the information they need to. I don't.
While they beam you up, they just analyze your entire structure.
Yeah.
Fire in the Sky. Thank you, Nate. That was the movie I was thinking of. So Johnny asked, can we ask Neil deGrasse Tyson for an interview about aliens? Oh, I can absolutely ask him. He's a busy guy, and I wouldn't expect him to show up. But man, if you haven't listened to his interviews or watched the Nova series or anything that this dude's involved in, he's like the modern day Carl Sagan, if you want to call it that. Brilliant dude. Great way of explaining things in lay terms so that we can all understand it. So, man, that would be awesome to have 5 minutes to talk to him. We abduct animals and return them with tags, and some people never come back. Millions of people are missing with no trace. Yeah, I would go along with that, guys. If an alien were to come here, and partially wipe your memory, but you still had flashbacks about what they did to you, wouldn't they just take you, and you'd be gone? I suspect that if aliens came here, like you guys said, if aliens came here to study humans, they probably just took them home with them. Why would you catch and release and then try to hide the fact? Or you just do it out in the front. You'd say, hey, we're here, we're taking you. You can't do anything about it, so you might as well cooperate. Just my thinking. Then again, if they're a million years ahead of us, their mentality might be quite different. I have yet to see human explorers returning collected specimens into their native environment. Yeah, so I think most of us agree on that one, right? All right, guys. Hey, it's 7:01. I know you got to get back to work. You got to get back to work. I got to get back to something. I want to say thanks to everyone for participating, for checking this out. I hope that you're enjoying this as much as I am. I think it's a cool way to take a break from the technical stuff that we will be getting back to next Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Tomorrow I'll be getting back to work, like most of you will anyways. If you like the video, please hit the little thumbs up thing. I know you're sick of hearing people say that, but we have to, because if we don't remind you, it doesn't happen, and then we get in trouble with YouTube and our videos don't get liked, all that stuff. Guys, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. And real world, I want to say, can I say it, or are we there yet? Are we there yet?
Not yet. I think it's
not
like
yet. 5. Okay. If you haven't already,
counts, or well, don't, but
where?
Subscribe.
Say that again.
Subscribe.
What are you at right now?
Current. I checked 975.
975.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not signed in right now on this browser, but
he is this close to 1,000 subscribers, which is a big deal on YouTube. Mainly because you'll have access to features that only certain creators do. So if you haven't subscribed to Real World Review, check out his channel. And if you like it, hit the subscribe button. And in no time, I guarantee you will be, Real World, you will be making tens of dollars. So just hang in there, man. It's going to happen.
And I'm actually going to eventually do a video on why I'm returning this, but I'm returning this phone tonight. Don't have it affect the review that I'm going to be publishing on Sunday, but look forward to that and all my other videos, all my other reviews.
So that's the XS, right? Or is that the Mac, the Plus?
No, like the sport, tennis.
Oh, the tennis. Okay, he's taking the tennis back.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks again. Have a good night, and I will talk to you all next time.
All right.